Good.
Welcome to your place.
Thank you. Boy, it looks pretty official in here.
Here we are. All right, have a seat. We'll get going. Hello and welcome to another Downtown Talks episode. We are privileged today to be here at the studio at Lincoln Square North, part of the Bellevue Collection. Seated here is Kemper Freeman Jr., Chairman and CEO of Kemper Development Company, which built and manages the Bellevue Collection. It's great to have you with us this morning, Kemper, and joining us for this conversation.
Oh, thank you, Patrick.
So it's a very busy time for all of us. We're still managing through the pandemic, and at the same time, the Bellevue Collection has adapted to customers, has adapted to tenants, and even looking back before that, what do you feel has contributed to the Bellevue Collection's success?
You know, one of the things that I will start with is some things that people in the community did to make Bellevue, Bellevue. And that was to stop everything else and make a real school system. We had a whole bunch of little one-room schoolhouses, 2-room, 3-room. A big school might have 6 rooms with all 12 grades going on. There was nothing special about any of it, and some parents got together and said if we could just do one thing that would make Bellevue a special place, it would be to create a first-class school system, the best in the Northwest, should be one of the best in the country, and that would attract a different demographic to Bellevue than other communities. And I think the proof of the pudding is, look what it's done. The demographics here are absolutely superb by any national measurement of the people who are here, the IQ of them, the motivation of them, the education that they have, the drive that they have, and to have two of the $3 trillion companies right here on the east side now, Microsoft and Amazon, who could have ever dreamed? And I could just go on, but I think there's a handful of parents. There wasn't a school teacher among them. It was parents just saying, this is something we could do, but they didn't have any money. All they had was an idea. And from that, and then one by one, all of the schools on the east side followed the same thing. And there's so we've got a whole series of school districts all trying to be the best they can be. And I think that's the most attractive thing you could do for what's turned out to be the high-tech community who works here now.
Yeah, really strong commitment to building the community, stepping forward and creating institutions in the community. This year marks the 75th anniversary of Bellevue Square. What are some of your early memories of Bellevue Square?
Well, my earliest memories is just watching the bulldozers and the road graders and the bright yellow machines. They looked like big Tonka toys. So I mean, I had no idea what Bellevue Square was or would be when I was a little kid, but I remember just thinking this is really exciting. And all of a sudden there were buildings, and then there were shoppers and tenants. My grandfather had originally purchased a piece of property for 10 cents a square foot, 10 acres. Which is the first property we had. And the next day, the Bellevue American, which was the newspaper at that time, ran headlines in the front page saying Freeman's folly, that some idiot has paid 10 cents a square foot for property. Property in Bellevue has never been worth 10 cents a foot, will never be worth 10 cents a foot. And so that was what the experts assumed was true, and it pretty much was true at that time. But to watch that be converted into some of the biggest, best, most successful companies in the world, some of the best jobs in the world, some of the greatest growth. We have 17 million square feet of Class A office under construction or in for permit. Almost all of it has the tenants that are going to occupy the building already identified, and they're among the best companies in the world. So it's gone from just a few simple ideas like let's if we could only do one thing, let's create schools. I'd just say one other thing that I think was typical of my father and my grandfather and many people that were here on the east side at that time. They spent about 30% of their workday on making the community a better place. And that was as volunteers. It wasn't Bellevue wasn't even a city, so it was just an idea and just a place. To watch people spend time on creating a hospital when they hired an expert that came and looked at it and said, oh, you're right, you guys need a hospital. you're wrong. You'll never be able to do it. You have only 10% of the assets that would be required to build a great hospital. And so as much as I'd like to continue working with you and helping you do it, it won't happen. And that group, without any money, figured out a way to do it. And it's one of the best hospitals in the region. And there's stories like that that have gone on. We had simple transportation facilities, didn't have either the floating bridges. There was hardly any way to get to Seattle. You had to go all the way around the lake, or later on you could take a ferry boat going across. And to see people start thinking of this community as a real community by itself, and to get some of these transportation facilities. And it wasn't various governments that did it. They were private sector individuals. There was a legislator, Al Leland from Kirkland, former mayor. He was the one that was the leading proponent of the 520 bridge and 405, things like that. My grandfather was the publisher of the largest agricultural magazine in the state of Washington, with 98% of the farmers on eastern Washington were his subscribers. And they were, the farmers were upset. The purpose of his magazine, the people that worked in the farms were upset because there wasn't enough different ways to get goods from eastern Washington to saltwater for the international markets, because the only way you could do it was the railroad. And in those days, if the railroad had a monopoly, the rate just went up instead of down. And so it was unaffordable. So they talked to my grandfather, and he became interested in the I-90 bridge and got a cross-state highway approved for the first time. A young legislator from Seattle, my grandfather, one person. These things just didn't happen someday. I mean, it was, so Al Leland got one bridge going, he got the other one going. 405, again to Al Leland, was a two-lane road at first that just kind of connected the east side in a way that we never had before. So we used to look and see what the problem was, and we went after it. Now we just seem to be one big, in a way, we're great, but we tend to be far more bureaucratic, and we have a hard time deciding what to do and when to do it. And in my opinion, we have a lot of things that need to be done that are staring us in the face, and we're kind of going this way right now. I think we'll get through it. We always have, but I think it's become more bureaucratic and more fooling around with important things that are staring us in the face. So we've got a great, unprecedented growth practically anywhere in America, and we need to be a lot more strategic on how we're going to make it work, or it won't.
And here in Bellevue, so there's been a tremendous amount of optimism, and that's been backed with hard work too, and a strong look at data. In the growth and evolution from Bellevue Square to the Bellevue Collection, how did that come about? How did Bellevue Square then become, there's Bellevue Place added, and then eventually Lincoln Square? It took time and a lot of thought, but how would you tell that story of the emergence?
A couple of different things, how it happened. To start with, Bellevue wasn't even a city when we started building Bellevue Square, and my grandfather had purchased the property for one idea, and it had fallen through. And my dad said, you know, he's read something about a thing called a shopping center. He wasn't even sure what to call it, but people were starting to talk about things called a shopping center. And his best friend through high school, at Broadway High School in Seattle, where my grandfather and my father went to school, said, Kemper, that there's something that is called a shopping center. They actually exist, and before you think of building one or developing one, you ought to go see one. And so my dad got in his car and drove for about 6 or 7 weeks all over the United States, and was able to find fewer than 20 shopping centers, and he looked at all of them. The one that made the most sense was in Dallas, and it was right on the kind of the Bellevue of Dallas with a shopping center. He met the developer who, the thing was very successful. It was a group of stores so that you could come to one place and you'd have a department store and you'd have a grocery store and you'd have a hardware store and a men's store and a women's store and all. You could achieve a bunch of errands in one place. It was the magic of a shopping center. And the founder of that shopping center said, here's a set of plans. Your property is 2,000 miles away. We're not competitors. Take my plans, copy them if you want, do whatever you want. And so he ended his trip and drove home and gave those to Bliss Moore, who was our architect, and they designed and created the idea of Bellevue Square, which was started in 1944 and opened in 1946. And Bellevue became a city 7 years later in 1953. So all of these proceeded. To get a permit in those days, if we think it's hard now, then you had to run into Seattle to King County. They were the permitting agency for Bellevue, which was just a place called Bellevue. So all that went through King County. So it was different. But now we've got our own city and same people on the east side, the public sector people, private sector just said, we should have a city so we can do these things and have our own staff right here. And so that was a big decision. Again, came from the private sector who promoted the idea, and it happened, and it's been a great city ever since, and much easier to get your permit than it was when you had to run into Seattle.
And in building the place, it's gone from the retail center of Bellevue Square to include hotels, to include office space, to include restaurants and other formats of retail.
That's really important, and you had that in your first question, so I really meant to include that because that is, again, it is what is a great market starts with a great market, which this all became, and then people talking to people who know what they're talking about. And one of the best advisors that I had was Dr. Saul Rabin, who was the head of research for Coldwell Banker when they were the largest brokerage firm on the West Coast. So he's Los Angeles and had many clients that had built, one, Ernie Hahn had built 50 shopping centers, and one of his clients, and just things like that. But he had lots of information. So we're lucky enough to put ourselves in contact with people who had information. And he said, Kemper, whatever you do, if you get Bellevue Square to be successful, your industry typically, then the people in your industry typically just go and build another one, and then they build another one, and then they build another one, and they build another one. And the best opportunity is different than that, and these people don't seem to know it, and that is great retail, which Bellevue Square had become, is the best catalyst for all other forms of commercial real estate. So great retail is a catalyst for all other forms of commercial real estate. So he said, if you were to, instead of building another shopping center somewhere, which is your industry's norm, build a mixed use as close as you can to Bellevue Square, and have hotels and office and restaurants and different things like that in it, a mix of uses. And the Bellevue Square is the catalyst for that, so it'll be successful. And he said, more than that, the success of the mixed use will make Bellevue Square more successful. We've now done that 3 times, and that is exactly what's happened every time. Our centers continue to grow and get better and better and better. And the mixed use was first Bellevue Place, the second one was Lincoln Square, the third one is Lincoln Square South. And each one of those have benefited. The square is the catalyst for the development, and the development then makes the Bellevue Square work better, and by significant double-digit numbers in each case. So this is a topic that most developers don't understand or even know of, because they get so busy doing something and they just keep doing it without why. And
one critical component in this case is that the decisions were made back then and with help of outside support and analysis, but the family and the commitment has stayed the same and true to improve upon what was built in the 40s and then move into the new century, adding on to it exponentially.
When we first when we first announced we were building an office building across from Bellevue Square, again, Bellevue American was that week's issue of the Bellevue American front page with all of the realtors on the east side that could be contacted to ask them, what do you think of Freeman's idea of putting an office building next to Bellevue Square instead of up on 108th, where everybody's decided that's where the office was going to be, because it's the top of the hill, so you get more view for office buildings. And but what they didn't understand is the catalytic effect of the retail to the office building. And so when we were building our building, we were the fourth building of 4 to be built. We were the last one to start. We were the first one to finish. In a very tough economy, we ended up having a big surprise, weak economy at that moment. Just some things that happened, inflation had gone crazy and a bunch of things. But we ended up with 10% higher office rent than any building in Seattle, which seemed to be so much bigger and better than we were at that point, to outperform their best buildings, to outperform any building in Bellevue. And that building is now 35 years old, and it's still the best. Got the best rent, the best tenants, and the best customers, and all that stuff. So the fact that we're, if you're in the same with our hotel, we had some parallel story when we announced we're going to do a hotel in our mixed use. Everybody that knew anything said, "Oh my God, Kemper, that's not where hotels go. They want to be next to the freeway." I said, "No, those are motels. This is hotels. It's a different thing." And the hotel and the office and the retail and the restaurants all want to be together, so you can walk back and forth, have a beer after work, or have your guests be able to stay in the next building while they're doing business with you in your office building. I think that synergy is incredible. But I guess what I want to say is I've been really lucky to run into people who had the expert advice that I've needed in order to make decisions right that look simple when it's all done, but it takes some thinking and coordinating and learning from people who know more than you do about what makes it work. And now you can say that really about the whole city of Bellevue has sort of, the whole city of Bellevue is going through an explosive growth period of some of the best, healthiest growth in the United States.
What, in your community life and in your work, Kemper, what have served as your biggest motivations in what you do and how you spend your time?
I think there's nothing more exciting than watching a project succeed in the direction that you've sent it. And I think we're unique as we do our research. We don't just follow tradition, but we do research to make sure there's something real that's there, because it doesn't do any good. You can have an epiphany in the shower with no facts and feel really good about it until you open and you're somehow surprised that you don't have any tenants and the tenants don't have any customers and the project's a flop. So that's the opposite way of doing it. And too many people get epiphanies and chase the epiphany, which often doesn't have facts, just an emotional thought. Epiphanies are important, but at least double check it with facts. And I've spent 14 years working on Marymore Farm when I was 9 years old till I was, however it was 14 years later, so in my 20s. Just a few miles away, it's now Marymore Park. It was the most incredible farm. I don't think that you can learn common sense any place faster than on a farm. We make lots of jokes about the farm kid doesn't know enough to come in out of the rain or whatever you want to joke about. But I'll tell you, when you're on the farm, it's up to you to make it work. And there isn't anybody going to come and rescue you. You're going to have to figure out how to do it, and it's got to work. And 14 years of that I wouldn't trade for anything else of my preparation for being ready for a kind of a complicated, sophisticated thing that we do now.
The Bellevue Collection sees millions of visits every year.
About 30 million.
Yeah, a lot. What has the customer taught you?
The customer, one of the things we do every year is called tracking research, which means we have professional team asking the similar questions that they did last year. What is it that we could do? What is it that you'd like us to do that we're not doing? What's missing? What would you like to see? And we also ask them, what about Bellevue Square? Do you like or not like? One of the things they love is free parking. One of the things that they hate is congestion. And I think sometimes the people in government get distracted on other phenomenon other than just simplistic, what is it the customer wants? And I was very excited to see just this week we've had a 7-0 vote. The staff wanted to soften up our focus on reducing congestion, and they wanted to take that word out and change it to manage congestion. And by a 7-0 vote, the council voted to stay with the emphasis on removing congestion. And I think it's none too soon that happened, to reaffirm that that's a big deal to people. Nobody likes
the access to the place is fundamental to the experience that
right.
they have at the place.
All of Bellevue, yeah. I mean,
well, looking forward, in addition to mobility and access, how do you see consumer behavior changing? We've seen an explosion of online retail. We've seen people changing their behavior in terms of where they live and what they prefer. Based on your view from the Bellevue Collection and what you're seeing here, what changes would you predict in our future?
I think there's a zillion things that are happening that are basically being done by several forms of high tech, and I see them as all good. I think there's too many articles being written that somehow there's a war going on between traditional bricks and mortar and high tech. Speaking for our company, we've had our best year ever in the last 12 months, even with all this stuff going on. Over half our stores are having record-breaking sales. And the largest online seller is in Bellevue now, with 9 buildings about to house their best employees, and they also had their biggest year last year. So but somebody ought to pay attention to, we and they both succeeded at a peak together in the same town, and we're not enemies, we're friends. We work with them all the time, and their founders and everything are people that are some of my best friends, and we work together to make things work. And so we welcome them, and they're helping us be more successful, and I think we're helping each other be more successful. One of the best things that ever happened to shopping that the internet provides is great information about products. And one thing where we really have in common is the internet is the best place to go learn about whatever product you're interested in. Maybe you want to buy a new electric car, or maybe you want a new this or a new that. Where's the best place to learn about it? The internet. And then it gets down to, where am I going to buy it? And if there is a convenient place to come and buy it, where you can come and talk to a store owner about the products and maybe even learn one more thing than you learned on the internet or something, that whole dialogue continues. So what's interesting, we and they have had the best year ever together at the same time in the same city, and are friends. We're not, the people who write these stories would just assume we're enemies. We're not enemies.
Well, another growing customer base for Downtown Bellevue are residents, and we're here in the studio. So tell me a little bit more about what happens here in the studio, and why are people, what are they looking for in living in Downtown Bellevue?
One of the things we do with the studio, we build everything from condos to apartments to office buildings to stores to restaurants to movie theaters to whatever the research says is short of. That's what we try and do within Bellevue and in this market. What we're seeing is that there's a tremendous amount of people coming here that are being, the jobs are phenomenal. I mean, there's a standing order for 5,000 high-tech jobs for the last several years. That statistic stays about the same, but when I ask high-tech companies aren't you finding anybody? Oh no, we're hiring lots of people. We still need lots more. So they still, I mean, last year they needed 5,000. This year they need 5,000. The year before they need 5,000. It's not the same 5,000. But these jobs for high tech that's here on the east side, this is not a bunch of warehouses. This is high tech where the great ideas are being created by the best trained, smartest students that come out of college worldwide. We have a worldwide shortage for these employees. Those salaries, 100,000, starting 100,000 to 250,000 a year right out of college. That's not the community I grew up in. But that's what we have now. So we've got people that are outrageously smart, working for great companies. They're being paid well. They've been trained well, and they love the East Side. And I think the idea of what our founders really started to make things happen was create the best school system. It's proven once again there was no single thing we could have done to attract this more than what our founders did. Better schools, that's what they want. When they first come here, they tend to want to be up on Capitol Hill, and they're single and they're living in apartments and they're doing all the different things and a place to have a beer after work and all that kind of stuff. But when they get married, they want to come to the East Side. They want a swing set in the backyard. They want to go to one of our great public schools or private schools and live over here. So it's compatible with everything that's going on. They start out over there, they end up over here, and they stay in the community, and the companies become stronger and stronger. It's impossible to have dreamt this scenario, and here it is, and we're right in the middle of it. And it's a challenge to build these buildings, keep everything open and active and operating. But the reward is incredible because the market is, I don't know any community in the United States I would rather be in than where we are right here. And
yeah, when someone comes into the studio, they can glimpse the past, they can see what's current, and literally see renderings of what they could see out their window should they locate here, and then also glimpse the future through the models. So what's next for Kemper Development Company and the Bellevue Collection?
Well, we've done one shopping center in my lifetime. We've done one shopping center, 3 mixed-use projects. We're now doing our 4th mixed-use project, and it's a segment that all relates to everything that's going on here. We've got one of the most incredible, evolving sets of demographics of people who have got the great education in the world and come here working for great companies with great jobs and big salaries and bonuses and all kinds of things. And one thing we spend most of our time talking about affordable housing and all that other kind of stuff, which is important. But here we have a set of demographics that's completely at the opposite end, that is coming here to live and raise their family, and they have a good job and they have a good education, and we're building this mixed-use project, which is 2 city blocks. It's called the Bellevue, and
where will it be?
It's
Give
right
us
on the corner
geographic orientation.
Right on the corner of Northeast 4th and 104th Bellevue Way. So it's right on the corner where the park is, kitty corner across the street, and it's 2 city blocks. It will be the nicest hotel that's ever been built. It'll be a group of retail, will be the best retailers in the world, most of which have already committed to come here to be in this center because of exactly the facts that I've just shared with you. I've never seen the best tenants agree 4 years in advance to come to a project that hasn't been built yet. It's an idea right now, and we're on our way to building it. And we talk about capturing a bunch of customers who are excited to be here. The great stores. It will also we'll have some of the best homes in the downtown. Will be in there, which these people are attracted to. We'll have the best hotel, the best shops, and the best restaurants. And it's specifically everybody's going to want to come there, even if it's not exactly what you can afford to do every day. There's a phenomenon called aspirational for any of us that maybe aren't at that moment yet where that's where they shop, but it's sure fun walking through it and seeing the items. That's called aspirational. But there is a better set of demographics here than virtually any place in the country, and it all starts with we have the best schools. Now we have the best companies. They have the most success. To have 2 of the $3 trillion companies is beyond a dream, and that's Bellevue.
Well, and as you're looking to the future and talking to potential tenants, potential investors, even someone who is just considering Bellevue for the first time, what words of advice or encouragement would you give that person?
Well, I think it's the greatest place you could come, could call your home, no matter where you are on the spectrum. I think I'm trying to call out the fact that there's an explosion in this piece of this spectrum, which is here, and I feel we haven't been servicing that part. We've just taken it for granted. So that's good, but let's make sure that we keep our schools the absolute best. That's why these people are coming here. That's why they're locating here, that they want to live somewhere that their kids are going to get the school advantage they had when they were kids from wherever they were in the world. And these people have ridden a wave, whether it started in India or in Japan or in Vietnam or any place you can think of. Getting a high-tech education or being ready for what's going on today in the world, and then having a great place to live that's safe and has great schools for your kids so that they'll have a chance to make choices that will be successful for them. So I think it's a dream that, and it's all just happened it looks like on automatic, but one thing just led to another, and forefathers and mothers of this community sensed it and came up with these ideas, and they're still working full speed to this day.
And in your experience and life, you've served on many boards. You continue to serve on many boards, including the BDA's board, and engaging and showing up and providing perspective that's valuable to the community. How important for others do you feel is community engagement and getting involved in the fabric of civic life?
It's really important. And my grandfather, my father, and myself have, separately from each other, done exactly the same thing, and that is proportion 30% of my awake time, my grandfather's and my father, 30% of our awake time is spent on community engagement, not specifically our business. The activity is good for our business because we're making a better place to live, a better place to work, a better place to be for your family, and from that, it's made our businesses work better. So I can't tell you that it's detached. But I would also say, from now that I've studied other communities around the world, the absence or presence of an active private sector helping the public sector make sound decisions and recognize things that are right in our face sometimes that sometimes aren't obvious as they should be to people. Having those things be manifested here has created and we have a lot of people who by nature feel the same way. There was an unusual number of individuals willing to spend time to make Bellevue a better place, whether it's better parks or better this or better that or a better city council or all the different things, better schools. All these things have been part of people's day here. And the absence or presence of that teamwork between the public and private sector is what makes a town work or not work, or community work or not work. So I think we're lucky.
We are lucky, and I know we could talk for hours about downtown Bellevue and the past and the future, and we'll end on that note, but I want to thank you for your time and leadership and commitment to the community and for your time today and sharing more about your story and where things are headed in the future. Thank you, Kemper.
Thank you. We're all lucky to be here, and it's fun to see the results of a lot of people's work. Some have come and gone already, not here to see how it finished, but I'm sure they got a good view from where they are, and they're watching everything we do to make sure that we're on the right track, and I think we're lucky to be where we are. It's a continuous upgrade day after day after day for as long back as I can see and as far forward as I can see, so we're in a good spot.
Well, and I'd like to thank all of you out there watching this program. I want to thank others who are helping keep a good thing going, sponsors of Downtown Talks. They are Amazon, Heritage Bank, Kaiser Permanente, Puget Sound Energy, and Vulcan Real Estate. We'll see you next time on Downtown Talks, likely in the new year, 2022. Follow us on social media, and be safe, be well, and we'll see you soon in the heart of Bellevue.